without further ado, please allow me to introduce the star of Respect, Miss Jennifer Hudson. As it
Thank you so much for that. Thank you. Thank you. Y'all so sweet. Thank you, thank you. Thank you.
Wow.
Wow.
Much deserved.
Thank you.
We're going to have a very comfortable conversation here, Jennifer.
I had a shoe for y'all. But unfortunately, somebody else got it. And we know we got to get our job done. So I said, this is what y'all going to get. Because they about 10 minutes late. I hope it's okay, okay?
But she
I'm
still
sorry.
looks so good.
I just like it was cold. And Miss Franklin will tell you, okay? She liked the heat really warm, and so do I. I have to keep my instrument warm. And I said, I'm going to put on my shoe that's going to keep my feet warm and my coat, because I thought it was going to snow today. And so the little cute shoe is still en route, okay? But Jennifer warm. Oh, that's all. Thank you for letting me clear that up. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're here.
Thank you.
Your voice is here. Your presence is here. And so because of what we just saw on that screen, I have to feel Aretha is here. So that is all
I love that.
that matters.
Thank
And she
you.
still looks fabulous, though. Like,
Thank
this is a neat outfit.
Thank
Let's talk about this since we're talking about time. 10 minutes is nothing because you waited over 10 years
15?
for this 15 for this moment. And I know you talked about during that process and your relationship with Aretha and how you really got to know her, but I'm curious, as these actors, this is mostly actors in the audience, know, an offer doesn't always become a role.
That's
a
true.
role does not always become a movie, and a movie doesn't always become something that anybody gets to see.
Right.
So there's a moment when it becomes real. And so I'm curious, with this particular role, when did it become real? Because it was such a long journey. And when did you say, like, I'm playing Aretha on screen?
Honey, for me, it was when I was on the set. Now, you have to keep in mind, because it was such a long wait and lead up time until it actually happened. And we spoke about it 15 years ago, and then to be in talks for that long. And like you just said, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, but it was always in my heart to want to do. And in the back of my mind, anytime I would pay her tribute and things like that. So when it really started to happen, I'm like, no, this is really happening. And it happened all the way even through while filming, where I was like still processing it, like, and not to mention that it's Aretha Franklin, which is, it's not like you could get up, one day and say, I'm gonna be Miss Franklin either. So it came in doses. And then at the filming, I'm like, oh my God, what did I just do? Jesus. Because it's Aretha Franklin and I'm a fan, musically and everything she represents to us all. She's a world treasure. So when you are mindful of that, it makes it that much more scary. At the same time, it's even, as exciting as well.
Well, I'm glad. I have to feel, everything, there was a God's purpose to it, because it seems like all those 15 years is what allowed you to give this absolutely incredible performance that we all got to see. Yes.
Thank you.
Amen to that. But more so than that, there's still details in the preparation of every single thing. And I know as a performer, the performances mean so much, but I just want you to talk about dissecting them, because like any performer, there is a visual catalog of all of these huge moments. But you as the actor trying to give truth to this performance, how married were to the accuracy of it? Because it feels like she's there, but I know you had to maybe push some of that away as well. Yeah,
I think the overall key for me was trying to live it, or relive it, however she did in her life, and experience it that way. I thought it was important to, even with the performances, it's like, okay, no, if she sang it live, It was Amazing Grace, a live performance. Okay, well, we're going to record the live. We're going to live this moment as close to and as true to the way she did. You know, anyway, if every way to come from the most organic and honest and vulnerable place where it could feel that much more authentic, because that's what she gave us. So I felt like that was a necessary way to approach it, to get to that honest space. Yeah.
Well, can we say that again? So you saying all the performances, what?
No, it's live. Like
it's live.
Because think about it, it was concerts. And so it's like, well, when you want it to feel like it did when she did it. So how about make it that in the scenes where on the set, if you were there, you felt like you was at a concert, you know? And that's what Aretha did. So if we're gonna play Aretha, then that's what we need to do. At least in my mind, you know, yeah. Because she is music, you know. So I don't think we could have did any shortcuts in portraying her, or even the church scenes. That felt obviously the truest to me, where I'm like, I can't tell if we're in church or, wait, it's cameras here, but we in church, you know what I mean? And you can't really script a church scene. You know, so the extras was the congregation. The musicians were real musicians. So it's like, it felt like jam sessions at time. And we were also actors, but that's when it got tricky, when it's like, okay, wait, I'm singing live. Okay, we're acting. Wait, this ain't Jennifer's expression. How would Aretha feel? Wait, this ain't 2021. This is 1960s. So reapproaching in that way, and that's when it became like, okay, trying to figure out a balance, you know?
And this goes back to something I was talking to her about, because if you guys have seen Jennifer on any of her interviews where she sits down at the piano, she has these incredible nails when she does it. And I'm always just like, as a piano player, that's just adding like another 3 points of difficulty if this was the Olympics. And singing live, trying to do a biopic when so many people do playback, that's like 10 points extra difficulty, which is even more incredible. So thank you so much for that. I do want to talk about, too, what you mentioned is you are with Aretha through several chapters of her life. And as she, I think, even learned to embrace her own power. And the thing about your performance I found to be even more interesting was in those early days when you're next to Marlon, and he is in so much control of that relationship, and she seems almost shy, but you'll see a glimmer of her power, to the point where we get to the final chapter when she is just owning her power in everything that she was. Talk about your conversations maybe with Lisa, sort of like peeling back those layers, because films aren't always shot in order, but you have to know where she was, where Black women were.
Exactly. That right there was the key. I remember working with Leland Thompson, the acting coach, and then with Tom Jones, the dialect coach. And Tom and I would sit on the musical side. It's like breaking it up in different categories. So you have the musical path, and it's like the age progression in that. Like Aretha starts out about 16, 17 years old. Well, I just turned 40, you know what I mean? So it's like, how do you tell the arc of the story with her voice? Because her voice continued to evolve, you know what I mean? And then music was different when they started out, and it's storytelling in that. And then as far as developing the character of a young Aretha coming up in the era in which she came up in, it's like, why was she the way she was? What made her up to be that way? Well, what era did she grow up in? And I remember walking in on the set like, well, Jennifer's expression would be taking up space in the room. And Leland said, well, how does she take up space? And what was the conditions for women during that time? So it took an understanding to go back to understand what the conditions were for women and how were they perceived, how were they expected to exist. And they didn't take up much space in the room. You know, so when we, who like myself, come from, you know, the era which we come from, we're different. We are allowed to take up space. So when I realized, like, wow, I can't just walk in a room and say how I feel or express myself to the magnitude that I would, I have to approach it how women did during that time. So it raised the question of, how did they exist? And then not to forget, she was also a pastor's kid as well. And I know growing up in church, you have to be a certain way just coming from the church. But then when you are the pastor's daughter and then Aretha Franklin on top of it, it's a certain expectation there too, which will change how you exist in space along with the time in which you grew up in.
Yeah, I mean, there's something about knowing one of the reasons why she was able to be on stage is she was someone who everybody always had eyes on her, literally from the moment she came out of the womb, which is just a different, I think, approach than any other performer maybe would be, because pastor's kids, everybody watches the pastor's kids.
Yes.
About everything.
You have a very special position.
I have to talk about this cast because, listen, Audra McDonald,
oh my God,
Marlon Wayans, Titus Burgess, Mary J. Blige, Heather Headley, and then you there leading that as the first name on the call sheet. Also, though, with a black director literally trying to give, I would say, a conduit to one of the greatest black icons we've ever seen. That is something that I think bonded y'all, because I was at the very first screening when it was literally all the names I just mentioned, save Mary J. Blige. She wasn't there for that one, but it was like Titus. And you could feel that I think everyone on the stage appreciated the gravity of that. But it also, I think, bonded y'all in a different way. And I just want to talk about how y'all felt going through that, because there's a pressure to it.
It's a pressure to it, definitely. And I think we all sense that pressure together. But the beautiful thing is we were all there. When I say from the DP to the extras to the director, actors, every single department was there out of love and respect for Miss Aretha Franklin. And we knew what wow, we're the chosen ones to do this. Okay, now how are we going to do this, and how we're going to approach this. So it was done, with that in mind and out of care. And it created, I call it the respect family, like a bond within all of us. There was not a day and not a soul that did not want to be there on the day. Like, okay, every day, everybody came in there with their A game on one accord, just every single day. It was just a beautiful energy. And yes, it was nerves and jitters under there for all of us, but the beautiful part is we knew we were all in it together, Yeah.
I will also say this, being as though there was such authenticity, so much blackness in the creative process of this. It was the little things I noticed in the film, like when y'all first start singing Respect, all the black women have their hair in wraps. Now, I'm not saying, wow, in the hands of a non-black director that wouldn't have happened, but I know a black woman was there. You know what I mean? When that,
yes.
Like that moment, it's like, of course.
I didn't even catch that.
Like, if you're waking a black woman up in the middle of the night, sis is gonna have her hair wrapped. It's not like we just walking out of here looking like this with these curls.
It's realistic.
It's very realistic. But I'm just curious for yourself, what authentic touches did you have conversations about? Because like I mentioned earlier, you spoke to Aretha, it was like weekly, daily,
yes.
like all the time. So what was something that you wanted to add into this? Because I know a lot was on the page, but.
Just most important to me was maintaining her faith throughout the premise of the movie. That was most key to me. And then again, approaching it as authentically as possible. I remember it's a scene in there where it was you know how you get your call sheet and it says Aretha hair is all over her head, yada, yada, yada. And I walked in the day of to shoot, and it's like, I remember Lisa pulling me to the side. She's like, you know you're gonna go on camera. You want this to print? And I said, that's what the scene says. That's what it requires. And if we're gonna tell this story, it should be told from the most honest space from the actor, considering whose story we're telling. So in that way, to have it be raw and authentic and real and honest. And I love the room that she gave all the actors, and the way she cast the film. At times I'm like, some of them like, do you call them musicians first or actors and musicians? Like I remember Titus Bridges in one of the church scenes, and I said, no honey, you playing that piano for real. It was so authentic in every way. And that's due to the way she set the tone and the sets and then allowed the actor to breathe, because not every director allows that. But she knew when to get in there, when to let us breathe, or, let us be musicians, and like the respect scene, we did not want to end that scene. We had the best time, like creating and being in the moment. And as a musician, those are the pieces that we feel are always missing in movies about music, when it's like, it's so much more to that process, but it's so necessary to be seen in a film that's about a musician. You know what I mean? So it's so many different things to, pull from costuming.
I was just about to say, I mentioned the hair wraps, but I wanted to know what was the hardest. One, some of those 70s costumes, because I know those are not comfortable. The numerous wigs you have to wear.
They heavy.
The piano playing. The singing dialect, because we know you can sing, Lord knows that, but singing as Aretha, I'm sure, was like a whole nother thing. Like, what was the most difficult thing to sort of fuse into this performance, or were they all sort of hard to sort of juggle together?
Yes. It depended on what scene it was. Like, I find the toughest scenes when it's like, okay, when it got emotional. Or when it had an arc where it's coming out of just a scene into something emotional. Those scenes to balance that emotion. And at times that's when I'm like, I really need to cut through here, because you're still using your own emotion to pull from. But keeping in mind of like, okay, what's the ultimate goal? And if you notice, and I have to say this, like as an actor, okay, Aretha smoked. And we started out the scenes, I think it was this is my first time saying this too. I want to say it was Never Loved a Man. And I said, okay, y'all want me to sing, or you want me to smoke a cigarette? Because these two are not going to work together. But I think Aretha was known more for her singing than smoking. So when you had to split the difference, you know what I mean? So that, it came tough, because when I'm acting, or when we did it's another thing, I think Say a Little Prayer, and when the extras came in, they was expecting to hear Jennifer Hudson. They like, okay, and they was like, wait a minute, she's not singing like herself. And they said, oh, she's Aretha. No, you here to see Jennifer Hudson, the actress. Jennifer, this ain't about me. So when you can separate the difference and know who you're here to serve or here to portray, like sometimes that was one of the things I struggled with the most. Like, okay, what am I supposed to do with this? How am I supposed to approach this? And I, again, still sit with those thoughts, because this is Aretha, and it's someone we all know. You know what I mean? So it's like, it's a huge thought process that I feel like a lot of things doesn't happen until you're in the scene.
Yeah, this is not like, when you're doing these period pieces about certain historical figures, nobody knew what they sounded like, nobody knew what they walked like. This woman lived her life in front of a camera and on stage, so people knew. Real quick though, the wig you wanted, that you loved, the wig you wanted to take off immediately, and the same question for the dress.
I've never heard it asked like that. Okay, well, my favorite hair was the beehive. It was heavy. But I love the beehive. I also like the little turbans that she wore. I've been looking for some of them. I might have to call Clint, send me some of those.
Which one did you want to get out immediately, where you were like, please don't make me
It was probably the same hair, though. Because you can't scratch your head, you know what I mean, type of thing. And it kind of guided you in a way. So I had 11 wig changes and 83 costume changes, which was a process in itself. I think I was in the fitting for a whole week, just trying out different things. My favorite outfit or dress was the beaded one that's on the poster. Yeah. And it was so heavy, which make it affect your role. You know what I mean? You can't help, because the way it's structured, those things matter. It changes stuff because they pin you up, they corset you out, you know what I mean?
I love
Which helps build the character though, right? Yeah.
So many actors talk about when they get in the costume, that's when the character becomes real.
Yes.
And like 83, Lord.
83.
We've already touched a little bit on the cast, but I know obviously your connection with Forrest and how many times you guys have been on screen together is incredible. But But the one I want to talk about is the one that I realized watching his interviews was you and Marlon. He's been very vocal. Like, he wants to make y'all the Billy D and Diana Ross of the 2000s. He
said we should remake that.
Yeah, he literally is. He's like, they did all those movies together. We need to do all these movies together. And that's funny when I heard him say that, considering you told him to choke you harder. For what So,
you did your research.
A little bit. So, a little bit of backstory. In the fight, the physical fighting scenes that you guys do, and that is not stunt work. You guys are really going for it. There's a level of trust you have to have with an actor where you can literally turn to him and say, no, give me more. And so I want to talk about one, why? Because that is...
Well, because I like things to be real. And it's like moments like that, like, no. Give me something to react to. And I always feel when I'm doing scenes like that, if I don't walk away with some type of bruise or something, I didn't do my job. You know, that's just how I feel about it. And I just remember saying that, like, no, really shock me. Give it to me. Give me something to respond to. And when I did, he did choke me. That's for sure. I said, you choked me for real.
I mean, you gave him the freeway. But then also, I know y'all had to have a level of trust as actors for you to make that statement. And how did y'all build that?
You know what? I have to give that credit all to him. Marlon, I love Jamie Foxx, but Marlon is now my favorite co-star. He would bring my meals, y'all. He didn't let nobody help. One time he bought me 100 chocolates because it was my favorite. He will order massages. Like, he built this whole rapport. Now, I ain't got no flowers since, okay? I'm looking for them. But, yeah, he was just... And he was so kind to everyone. And again, it just felt like a family. So I guess it gave us the room to feel comfortable enough with each other. Now, the scene that was a little scary was the scene when him and the other character was fighting. And I was like, oh, God, let me get out of the way. You know, that felt, I think, a little bit more frightening than our actual fight scenes, in a way.
I mean,
I want to say, yeah.
That's hard to say because, like, that hotel scene, I literally was like, this is serious. This is a lot. The other thing you touched on, too, you talked about Aretha smoking, but also the aspect that, you know, I think maybe isn't as well known, which is that her battles with alcoholism. And I think with that one, too, that was partially necessary for Aretha to find herself in the end. Obviously, you have to go to that valley. That's why the Amazing Grace scene is so incredible. But I find that even more difficult. It's easy to be angry. It's easy to cry on screen, but to just portray a broken person who does not know they're broken. And what, you know, research there was. Because, again, that wasn't as documented in her past as other things.
That is true. I mean, I just think when you don't have much to draw from with something like that, it's still a triumph. It's still a trauma. And we all have that to some capacity. And so, like, for myself, I like to find, you know, whatever that is within myself, that even though if it's not the same, you know what I mean? And to try to pull whatever emotional connection that can be most honest in a moment like that. And I think what helped give that scene power is, or those scenes, is the things that it brought back for her, you know, and having an understanding of it. And then connecting with that character and feeling for it, for them to want to tell their story even more. This has nothing much to do with that, but what I mean by that is, like, say, for instance, the memorial scene for Dr. King. If you don't have a heart, if you don't think about what she must have felt having to carry that weight after losing someone who was so close to her that she even called him uncle, and then still having to get up there and be the light to lift everybody else up. That's a lot. So I can't help but to feel for that. And for it to come from an honest place. And then, okay, if someone is drinking, why are they drinking? Well, what traumas is under there? And then, well, what's your own? And be able to pull from that. It doesn't have to be the same. It's, you know, it still has a similar effect. And being able to pull from those things to help, tell the story.
I have to just say this, and this is literally me going off of this, but I have to say, watching you at Aretha's funeral gave me the same chills watching you portray Aretha on screen, because I was thinking the same thing. I was like, this is someone they're very close to, but they have to be the light in this moment on stage. Wow. So I just feel like maybe you transported yourself to that moment again.
It's interesting you went back to that, because in that moment, I felt so many different emotions. It's like, oh God, wait, first of all, let's be human. We're at someone's funeral. This is someone's mother. This is so, you know what I mean? Who are they? Like, that's when you allow the reality to set in, and then be a human in a moment outside of, oh my God, this is Aretha Franklin. You know what I mean? Then you add that element. This is the world's greatest singer, and Lord, I got to sing at this funeral. So it's that too. The whole world is watching. That's what I mean by being present in the moment. You're gonna feel everything.
We just have a little bit more time, but I have to say this. You mentioned Jamie Foxx, and I think he'll tell anyone, and I'm sure he's told you, there is no separating him and Ray Charles at this point after what he had to do with that role.
I can imagine.
He had to live it. He's going to be forever personified for it, both from the accolades, but then also where he had to go on screen. But you have to put parts of it to bed. So I guess for you, now that you have come to this moment and the journey's not over, Oscars are in April, folks.
Oh, Lord.
Just going to say that one. But
thank you.
Where do you want to place Aretha now? Because it's different than she was a mentor, a friend, a fan. It's different than playing her on screen. It's going to be different going forward. When you think about where you are going to rest with her going forward, where do you want to place it?
Coming from my own losses, I feel like the best thing to do when you have to let others go is, those that are dear to you, is to continue to move in a way that they would be proud of. And so I will approach it the same way that I do my own family. You know what I mean? And I feel like the thing she left me with, and that she was big about the most, and I feel like that is a huge undertaking and tone from the film, is owning your own voice. And from that was my takeaway from the film. And if you notice, it wasn't until she owned her voice that we got our Queen of Soul. So if we all took the time to own whatever treasure that's within us all, what king and queen is under there? So thank you. That's the piece that I will carry with me, although I don't want to let it go. You know what I mean? Like, even with the film, I was like, it's been there for us so long. It's almost like, oh wow, what am I supposed to do now? All I hear is I say, Jennifer, own your voice.
I don't think there's a better place than we can end it than right there. So thank you so much.